which taxes could rise in the budget to fill £40 billion black hole. What we know. Sir Keir Starmer and Chancellor Rachel Reeves are planning tax rises ahead of the autumn budget, according to a report. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is reportedly exploring options to raise additional revenue from inheritance tax ahead of the autumn budget. The move comes following reports earlier this week that the government is planning tax rises ahead of the autumn budget. The Guardian reported the government will begin preparing the ground from next month to forewarn the country about what is to come. Government U-turns over winter fuel payments and welfare reform have left Reeves with a multi-billion-pound spending gap to fill amid pushes for a wealth tax by some Labour MPs and millionaires themselves. Why is the government considering increasing inheritance tax? The paper reported that there will be no increases to income tax, national insurance, or VAT, a key Labour manifesto pledge ahead of last year's general election. Sarah Coles, head of personal finance at Hargreaves Lansdowne, said that choosing to increase inheritance tax meets the government's criteria of raising tax without taxing people more during their working lives. Added to this, by raising revenue through inheritance tax, there are a lot of ways to garner more income. The system is so fiendishly complex that there are an enormous number of rules, and therefore tweaks, that the government could consider, she said. One of the paths to explore would be a maximum limit on the amount of money or assets that can be given away as potentially exempt transfers, pets, without incurring inheritance tax, IHT, if the donor survives for 7 years after making the gift, which taxes could rise. While increasing inheritance tax is being explored, there are still other options on the table. A rise in gambling taxes looks to be on the cards, with Reeves leaving the door open for this. On August 7th, after Gordon Brown had urged the Chancellor to raise levies to cover the cost of lifting the two-child benefit cap, the former Prime Minister is calling for the government to increase duties for online casinos and slot machines, with Reeves saying of this, "We've already launched a review into gambling taxes. We're taking evidence on that at the moment." Reforms to gambling levies could generate the £3.2 billion needed to scrap the two-child limit and benefit cap, the Institute for Public Policy Research has said. Meanwhile, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, NIESR, a major economic think tank, has called for reform of the council tax system, such as overhauling council tax bans and possibly replacing it with a land value tax. The government has not commented on this. Leading health experts have also called for a change to the alcohol tax, linking duties to inflation and ending cider exceptionalism, a 2023 measure which resulted in cider being taxed at a lower band compared to other products of the same strength, which taxes are not expected to rise. The government remains committed to its pledge not to increase income tax, national insurance, or VAT, though recent messaging has been mixed. On August 6th, Starmer declined to explicitly say whether the government was still committed to not raising VAT, income tax, as well as corporation tax in the budget. Downing Street later sought to clarify the government remains committed to its manifesto pledges, which included a promise not to raise taxes on working people, including income tax and VAT. There have been mounting rumors of a wealth tax, but as it stands, the government is ruling this out. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy, Scottish Secretary Ian Murray, and Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds have rejected this in recent weeks, with all of them suggesting it wouldn't work. Why do taxes need to rise? Reeves has set herself 2 fiscal rules. The stability rule, which ensures day-to-day spending is matched by tax revenues, so the government only borrows to invest, and the investment rule, which requires the government to reduce net financial debt as a share of the economy. NIESR said weaker than expected recent economic activity, U-turns on welfare cuts, and forecast-beating borrowing mean Reeves is on track to miss one of her fiscal rules by £41.2 billion in 2029 to 30. It cautions she faces an impossible trilemma of trying to meet her fiscal rules while fulfilling spending commitments and upholding the manifesto pledge not to raise taxes. And it said she will likely need to break the promise not to raise taxes for working people and resort to moderate but sustained hikes or cut spending to address the shortfall. Reeves says rulings on tax must wait for budget amid inheritance tax speculation. Caitlin Doherty, Deputy Political Editor. Thursday, August 14th. 2025 at 1:55 p.m. GMT+6. 2-minute read. Rachel Reeves has said that decisions around taxes will have to wait for the autumn budget, amid reports that the Treasury is looking to raise more money from inheritance tax. The Chancellor told reporters that decisions will be made in the round, and her priority is to get our economy firing off all cylinders. Earlier this week, The Guardian reported that officials are examining whether tightening rules around the gifting of assets and money could help address the UK's multi-billion-pound fiscal shortfall. Government U-turns over winter fuel payments and welfare reform have left Chancellor Rachel Reeves with a multi-billion-pound spending gap to fill. Asked about the reports on Thursday, Ms. Reeves said, "Any decision around taxation is a decision for the budget, and I'll make those announcements. We haven't even set the date yet for the budget, but the key focus of the budget is going to be to build on numbers that we've seen today to boost productivity and growth and prosperity all across the country. That is my number one priority as Chancellor, to get our economy firing off all cylinders so that working people in all parts of the country will feel the benefits of that economic growth." Pushed on whether taxes will have to increase in the autumn, Ms. Reeves added, "We'll wait for the official forecast from the Office of Budget Responsibility, and we'll make those decisions in the round." Among the reported inheritance tax measures under consideration is a potential cap on lifetime gifts, part of a broader review into how assets can be transferred before death to minimize inheritance tax liabilities. Under current UK rules, gifts made more than 7 years before a person's death are exempt from inheritance tax. Gifts made between 3 and 7 years prior are taxed on a sliding scale, depending on their value and the total estate. The Chancellor was speaking as new official figures show that the UK economy slowed in the second quarter of this year amid pressure from tariff uncertainty and tax increases. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, said gross domestic product, GDP, grew by 0.3% for the quarter after 0.7% growth in the first 3 months of the year. However, the figure was stronger than the 0.1% level widely expected by economists after an uptick in activity in June and revised data for earlier in the quarter.